Hey guys, thanks for showing up today. Sorry we're running a little bit behind. What I'm going to have to do is drop the links to the resources in the chat today. We're having a little bit of difficulty getting them to upload. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with introductions, and then we'll talk about where we're going next. This is the NMSI AP Reader Chat for AP Language. My name is Shauna Lynch. I am a 23-year veteran. I have been grading the AP exam for 11 years. I am also a table leader for the College Board, so I work with teachers and helping them learn how to use the rubrics appropriately and grade. And I'm also an AP consultant, and obviously I'm here on behalf of NMSI, so I also work with NMSI schools, students like yourself, and also NMSI teachers. Now I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Ruben Rodriguez, who's going to introduce himself.
Hey guys, my name is Ruben Rodriguez, and I'm out of Austin, Texas. I have about 25 years of AP work, not only teaching in the classroom, also consulting, and I have been to the reading, as is the case with Shauna. Had the reading actually occurred this year, the way we've done it for the past 18 years, or 17 years, it would have been year 18 for me. So I'm glad to be here. I'm hoping that Shauna and I can put to bed, lay to rest, if you will, some of the questions that you have today. So we're hoping to have some good conversation once we go through a few points that we want to share with you and some strategies that we want to share with you.
All right, guys. First thing I want to do is go over a couple of things about social norms. If you can go ahead and give me a thumbs up in the chat that you can see the PowerPoint that's on the screen, that's going to help me. Just because we were, like I said, juggling some technical issues right before we started. And I want to make sure that you're hearing me and you're seeing me, and you can also see the PowerPoint screen. Can I get a thumbs up in the chat? Or a yes? All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, cool. All right. So just to kind of cover some of the social norms today, you guys are probably experts at this. Ruben and I, we've been playing with technology since we've gone online. And so we enjoy chatting with each other. We enjoy chatting with you. Just as far as the chat goes, if you have an echo sound, you probably need to mute. Mark, I see you in the chat. Be nice, obviously. Can I make the PowerPoint bigger? That's our problem, Ria. I wish I could. Don't worry, I've given you links. So as we're going through the PowerPoint, let me try. Okay, let me try something else, kiddos. Kiddos want the PowerPoint bigger. All right, kiddos, let me try. I'm going to do something else. All right. This is going to hurt me. I don't want to do that. Okay, is it bigger now for you? Thumbs up. Is the PowerPoint bigger? There we go. All right, great. Thank you, Tejas. All right, guys. So as we're chatting today, be nice with each other, share with each other. Yes, Jose, this is being recorded. If you need a question, there is a parking lot, so please post your questions in the parking lot. We're going to try to save most of our time today to answer your questions. Also, you can comment on each other's questions in the parking lot, or you can upvote for those things and say, hey, 500 of us want this question answered. So please use the upvote feature in the parking lot, and please use the parking lot to post your questions. If someone else, if you're in the chat and you guys are going back and forth and you ask a question and either Ruben and I don't see it, if you can answer that question from somebody in the chat, please do so. If you've got links to things that you have found online or other study sessions, please go ahead, post those good resources. Share everything you know, because sometimes kids, you guys do a much better job at finding some tricks out there, especially since we're moving in an online format that we can use. But we're going to try to go over those with you today. So if everybody has, I hope, I'm going to post it again. This is the link that you need to go to this AP language and composition tip sheet. And so what I put together for you guys is this sheet. So if you'll click on the link and open the tab, then you can see the two-part PDF that I created for you. So the first page is a checklist. So I created two checklists for you. I created a checklist of what we need to do now, and then a checklist of what we need to do on the exam day. And on this checklist is also going to be um, some tips along the way. So the first thing I hope you've done, and I'm going to be speaking as an AP teacher, so my own kiddos have the same checklist. I've asked them to review the contact information. By now, you should have gotten an email from the College Board out of your AP, your My AP account that you have with the College Board. So that's the login and that's the information that they're using. Another thing that I tell kids is like, do not use, we have school email. Never use a school email because usually the filters won't let it go through and it'll block it. So make sure that you've reviewed that, that you've got that information and you've made that connection with College Board. The next thing on your checklist is to watch the demo video. If you have not watched the demo video, please do so. It allows you to practice submitting your responses. And that's the two things I want to talk about today is how to respond and using time as your weapon. If you can't connect to the demo, then you're not going to be able to connect to the test the day of the test. So that's why it's so important right now. Please, please, please go you do the demo at my AP at College Board. Now, you won't get your ticket until 2 days before the test. If you're having problems, so 2 days before the test, please, if you haven't received it, go to myapcollegeboard.org and you can access it there. And then I'm teaching all my students to have a note sheet. And I've made note sheets. You can make your own note sheets. Your teachers maybe are working with you and collectively working on note sheets. Gather all the resources that you're going to need for the day of the test at one time. And so if you are a graphic organizer person, make yourself a template that you want to use that day of the test. If you want to have a list of all your rhetorical choices, if you've got a list of those and you think I'm going to need this, then have that with you as well. Any other classroom materials your teacher may have created or handouts, because you want everything together. So my tip is to obviously review prior to the test and prepare ahead of time. If you've got a favorite pen you like to write with, even think about the comfortable clothes that you want to wear. Girls, sometimes pulling back our hair makes us more comfortable. Making sure the area in which I'm going to take my test is going to be an area in which I'm comfortable. Because the worst thing that we want is stress, because stress causes cortisone to be released in the brain, and then the brain gets foggy and it's trying to figure out what's going on. So please prepare ahead of time, get your e-ticket, get all your materials that you need that day, get your study sheets, get your graphic organizers, and collect them all. And then when you're doing the demo, the next thing is you're going to check technology. You can use a laptop, a desktop, a smartphone, or a tablet. The thing is you've got to have Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or Edge. You can go on to College Board and test those formats. Here's the key, though. If you're on your desktop or laptop, if you have the Grammarly plug-in, like I even use it, I keep it on my computer as well. If you have the Grammarly plug-in, you need to disable it because it's not going to work. And I'm going to talk about typing versus handwriting in just a minute. So typed resources, let's talk about those. So this is best for laptop or desktop if you want to type. Now my kids say, Ms. Lynch, should I type or should I handwrite? It's what's most comfortable for you. If you ask me, I'm an older person and I can write faster than I can type. So you need to think about what's going to be the fastest modem for you. Is it going to be typing your response or writing your response? Badly, as far as I understand, it's just the Grammarly plugin you got to get rid of. And so the College Board hasn't listed any other plugins other than Grammarly. Pop-ups, though, that's a good thing, Fadley. I'm glad you brought that up in the chat. Get rid of pop-ups. As an AP grader, I've already had to test my computer. I've already had to go in and test that I can access your practice. I mean, your essays aren't there yet. And the one thing I had to disable were pop-ups. So pop-ups and Grammarly, I would definitely say. Type responses, you're going to have to type your AP ID number and your initials at the top of each page. And then the demo is going to help you do the side by side. And you guys are experts at this, of having multiple tabs and going back and forth. And so if you plan to type, the key is hit the save button in that Word document as fast as you can, because you're not typing live on the AP test. You're typing in a Word document, and you're going to copy and paste that over. So please hit save. Google Docs the same way. I just talk about Word. But how do you disable pop-ups, Amani? Go ahead and Google it. If you're like me, you'll just go to your settings, and it'll tell you exactly how to go through and disable pop-ups. So please save. The only formats you can save in when you upload it. So if you want to save it and then attach it, or you can save it and copy and paste. But if you save and attach it, it's got to be a doc, a docx, a PDF, a text, or an ODT. All right, handwritten responses. So those, if you're going to use a smartphone or tablet, that's the best way to do. You probably should do handwritten, because nobody wants to be on their smartphone trying to type an essay. So I would suggest handwritten. Now, this is where you have to write your AP ID at the top and your initials, and you can't have more than 5 total pages. I would not write front to back. I would have separate 5 pages. I would suggest that you use a dark pen. College Board says write in a dark pen or with a dark pencil. Pencils are not dark, and I'm going to tell you as an AP reader, and Ruben would probably agree with a thumbs up here. Pencil, when it's scanned, is so difficult to read. And so please use a black or blue pen would be best if you're doing handwritten. Please don't use a red, an orange, a blue, a purple. I know those are some of my favorite colors, but use a dark pen. And then when you use your cell phone, you're going to take it in a vertical position. You will not take it in a horizontal position. You want to be in the vertical position with your tablet or your phone when you take it. And then make sure before you hit that submit button that you have all the pages. So here's my tip for you. Whether you're doing typed or you're doing handwritten, prepare ahead of time. If you're going to do a Word doc or a Google doc, go ahead and title it AP Language Exam. Put your AP ID number there, because you should already have that, and put your initials. Go in, set up your page. At the top of the page, put your AP ID number and your initials. Put it in a header so it repeats on every page, or type it on every separate page. So if you're going to do handwriting, same thing. Get out your 5 sheets of paper, and at the top, write your AP number ID, and then also write your initials. That way, on the day of the test, bam, it's all there. You have resources, comfy clothes, comfy place to work. And here is either my electronic document or my handwritten document, and I'm ready to go in 45 minutes and knock it out. And so you don't have to worry about trying to prep ahead of time. On submit, obviously you have to either copy and paste the type response or attach. When you attach your photos, obviously make sure you have multiple photos and you have all of them. On the photos, consider the photo quality, right? Because the quality of the photo can be problematic. So make sure it's not blurry. Again, you want to make it easy on us readers who are grading on the first time online. We want to be able to read it. And I will tell you, we read everything. If it is blurry, we will do our very best. But really give your readers the best opportunity to score you as high as we can. All right, the last thing I'm going to go over is the exam day checklist. So I made a separate checklist just for the exam day itself. So you're going to do all of this ahead of time. That's your exam day of prep. And then exam day, you remember you need to be, you need to check in 30 minutes prior to the start time. That way, if there's any technology issues, like today we had technology issues, and Ruben and I were here at 3:15, and we're still trying to kind of work things out. So please check in 30 minutes. So I put on the first sheet zone time. So I'm in Central Time. So my kids are going to start checking in at 12:30. Now, here's a cautionary note. On the day of the test, your teachers are not allowed to help you. We can't help you with technology. We can't talk to you. It's considered a test violation, and your test would be invalidated. We don't want to do that. So that's why it's important that you get comfortable with this online. You do the demo, and then the day in, check in 30 minutes ahead of time. I just put a place for you to put your APID number. Again, a great resource to have. Make sure you have your device. Make sure your internet connection, your cellular connection is strong. If you're using a hotspot, if you need to go someplace in the house, make sure you're there. Have your note sheet, have your classroom materials. Now, the great thing is if you're going to be on the computer, you can have digital. So you can have multiple tabs open within your notes if you've got notes written out. But of course, I'm sure all of you heard from College Board, the cautionary tale here is do not copy and paste anything from the internet. They will invalidate your test. But if you have a note sheet, that's your personal note sheet in your Google document or your teacher shared with you, you can have that note sheet up or notes or materials or whatever. Some of you may like to print things and look at them. You can do that as well. I'd have a timer, and I know there's going to be a timer on the screen, but for me personally, like I use my Apple Watch and I'm always looking. You might want to put a timer in front of you. Maybe you have a cook timer from the kitchen. You know, anything just to kind of keep you cognizant of what's happening with time. Because my students are talking about running out of time. We've been practicing, and I'm going to talk about how to deal with timing issues in a minute. But you might want to have a timer. Again, about finding that safe space to work, remove all distractions. I have a dog. I got to put her up. I have a husband. He's almost as worse as the dog. I got to put him away. And I have to say, hey, this is my time. I've got to have 45 minutes plus 30 minutes. I've got to have an hour and 15 minutes of just solitude. And then, of course, the reason why I need you to check in 30 minutes prior is because you're going to have to go through filters, and they're going to do security checks, and there's going to be typing tests, and they won't give all the details because of security parameters. But the College Board is going to make you go through a couple of steps before you can ever get ready to kind of sit in that holding room and ready for the test to pop up. So that's another good reason to check in early. When you are in the exam itself and it starts, do not refresh your browser. If you refresh your browser or you hit the back arrow key, you're going to get kicked out because they think that you're attempting, obviously, to cheat, right? And so you can, if technology fails you, you can quickly use your exam e-ticket and return back into the exam. Don't call a teacher, don't call the school if this happens, and you can start back in. But if it's a major failure, like you lose internet that day, then you can request to do a makeup exam. And I gave you the link there at the bottom of this sheet, how to contact College Board to do that makeup exam. So I know you've got this. Throw an emoji into the chat and tell me how you're feeling right now about being prepared for the AP exam. You guys gonna throw me an emoji or just gonna, maybe I'm having to pause and wait. Rhea, don't be sad. You can't be sad. Did I give you good information? Yeah, I gave you good information, right? Amani, come on. All right, George is happy. All right, let's talk about what we can do to prep. Now, I hope many of your teachers have been sharing with you how you can use AP Classroom. And so if you don't know this at this moment, inside of AP Classroom is additional practice. So this is a screenshot of what I see as a teacher. It may not be exactly what you see, but I want to bring your attention to where my arrow is pointing, because I've shared screens with my students, and I know that they have additional practice with that little green circle there, right? This is why I'm going to talk about running out of time. So I've had students who say, Miss Lynch, I'm running out of time. Here is my suggestion to you, and I promise you Ruben as a grader will agree with me. That additional practice is open for all students. You guys can go in there, jump in there, and take as many practice essays online as possible, okay? So you have 45 minutes to write, and you have 50 minutes to, well, 5 additional minutes, which will give you a total of 50 to upload, right? So we want to be careful and not rob too much of that 5 minutes finishing our thoughts. So I have some kids that are really good writers, and they're really hard workers, and they're overachievers, and they're like, I'm running out of time. Well, one, I told them, let's go do more practice on AP Classroom. Go to those practice essays. Number two, so your teachers have told you, but will anyone grade those? Your teachers can, Jeffrey. Your teachers can grade those practice essays. I've been grading mine. When you're doing it, you're going to have an introduction with your thesis. So when we're talking about the rubric points here, that thesis point is achievable for every single one of you. You just got to have a thesis. It's rhetorical choices. You just got to talk about the rhetorical choices the author uses. Number one, that's your point. Then you should have hopefully 2 or 3 body paragraphs. And most of my students shoot for 3. They like to talk about the rhetorical choices and then talk about each individual one in each body paragraph. So my kids are running out of time when they get to that 3rd body paragraph. This is what you can do. Finish that body paragraph. Finish that thought. Who cares about the conclusion? At the end of that 3rd body paragraph, if you're running out of time, make a 1-sentence statement at the end of the body paragraph that just brings the whole essay back together about the rhetorical choices, and forget trying to write a beautiful wrap the package with a bow conclusion. Because we as graders are looking more, because that second part of your rubric is commentary and evidence, and that's 4 out of 6 points. You want those 4 points. If you lose a sophistication point because of a conclusion, so be it. You want 4 points rather than, because a 5 out of 6 is still a very, very high score. So if you're running out of time, think short, quick introduction, address the rhetorical choices, 3 body paragraphs, and if you can't get to that conclusion, wrap up that body paragraph in that last third body paragraph. Okay? Do you have to have 3 body paragraphs, Beatty? No, you don't. But I will say this. As an AP grader, my higher scoring essays are going to be a good introduction and 2 full body paragraphs. And then typically we'll see conclusions. So you don't have to have 3 body paragraphs. My students are comfortable with that structure of a 5-paragraph essay. And with the new rubric, the 5-paragraph essay really is beneficial. And I'm going to let Ruben here talk to that. Ruben, okay, you ready to come back? Talk about, they're asking, because I'm telling them at that 3rd body paragraph, if you run out of time, just put a sentence in there and close out your essay and not have a conclusion. And then someone asked, you have to have 3 bodies. And I said, no, but the 2 bodies are pretty full. And then you actually do see a conclusion. So let Ruben, he's also a grader. You come in and talk about this, Ruben.
All right, guys. Let's do this again. The last 10 to 15 minutes, the plan is that we're going to go ahead and open up the floor for discussions. And certainly right now, as I go over my spiel, if you will, Shauna will be addressing your questions as far as chat is concerned. Let me point out a couple of things, though. And Shauna is spot on as far as what she has told you, the advice she's given you. Between Shauna and myself, you're looking at over 50 years, if you will, plus, of we having worked in, if you will, in the AP world. So with that said, let me point out a couple of things. I noticed that initially some of you said in your chat that you said you were nervous, you were stressing. What do we do? Where do I go at this point? And let me point out a couple of things. The first one is, and Sean and I have talked about this extensively, is that at least in the cases of our students, I tended to worry if my students weren't concerned, weren't stressing. They weren't nervous about that, because that was a red flag for me, because you need to be concerned about this exam and how you're going to do on it. But you cannot let that supersede your performance on the exam. And again, easy for me to say, but as long as both Shauna and I have taught this course, I think that there needs to be a sense of you being concerned, because you being concerned shows that you want to do well on this thing, this exam. So please be aware of the fact that it's natural for you to be worried, especially since this exam is coming down the pike so very, very soon. Also, before Shauna shares with you the activity that I had my students do, especially now before the exam, is that what I want you to recall, and you may have heard this from your teachers before, is that it is important that you realize that the AP exam is as much a reading exam as it is a writing exam. And what we mean by that is simply, especially when it comes with rhetorical analysis, certainly synthesis and also the argument questions. But certainly with rhetorical analysis, you must be aware of, and this speaks back to what we have seen every year at the reading, Sean and myself, is that you must carefully, though quickly, read the prompt and look for everything in the prompt that you need in order to address this question. What we see, and I have seen at the reading now 17 years into this, is that we see a lot of students whose writing is beautiful. So the question is, are they skilled as far as writing? There's no question that they're skilled. But the issue that we have is that the students fail to do what the prompt is asking them to do. You must do what the task is asking you to do, because no matter how well you write, if you do not address the prompt, you're not going to do well on this exam. In Texas, anyway, it used to be that AP, we all know, stands for Advanced Placement. But at my school, with my students, I also reminded the kids that AP stands for All in the Prompt. If you do not address the prompt, again, effectively, and you do not do what the task asks you to do, it doesn't really matter how well you write. You're not going to achieve that for certainly at 5, that 6. It's simply not going to happen. So with that said, let me go ahead and show you, because one of the key elements, and you guys already know this, and certainly we teachers know this as well, is what do we do at this point, given the fact that we've pretty much covered everything the entire year? And now that you've been with your teachers online, same situation. So let me share with you guys, and again, you'll have this is available to you to print out, and this is the activity that I hit hard with my kids, and we tended to do this activity over and over and over again. And again, you have this available to you, as Shauna has already given you the link to the activity. But what I want you to note is that the activity before you, the bottom half, immediately under the lines, is a piece of text. Beautiful passage that you have here. And the activity that seemed to work so well with my students is that I pretty much was turning the tables on them. Instead of giving them a prompt, what I gave my kids, again, this far into the school year, right before the exam, is that, notice, I gave them the text, and then in the lines immediately above the text, I had my students write a prompt to suit the text. The prompt that they created on their own is or was modeled after an AP-style prompt, and goodness knows you guys have seen hundreds of these throughout the entire year. So what my kids would have to do is they had to, if you will, create a prompt modeled after an AP prompt that they were able to choose from all the ones that I had given them the year to do timed writings on. As such, creating, if you will, the rhetorical situation. My students did incredibly, incredibly well for the entire time that I taught this class using this activity. So again, hopefully it'll work for you. But as I said, if we go back to where I started with this, is that this is equally a reading test as it is a writing test, especially with rhetorical analysis. I think that Shauna and I have had this discussion before. Rhetorical analysis, I truly, truly do believe, well, I know it for a fact that it's my favorite question. Why? Because rhetorical analysis asks you to do all of the to utilize the strategies and activities that you've been practicing all year long. I think that what I also drove the point home with my students is that I wanted for they to approach the rhetorical analysis question too in a way that it was, if you will, a game. Because ultimately what you're doing, and again you know this already, is that you are analyzing someone else's effective argument. And the intent is that you are analyzing it to tell me, the reader, to tell Shauna, the reader, as to why number one, why the piece is effective, and number two, how the piece was written in order to be effective. So in other words, the intent here is that it's not what the passage is about. It's how the passage was created via, if you will, diction, word choice. Which words did the author use effectively in order to create a sense of tone? In order, if you will, to create a sense of ethos, a sense of pathos, a sense of, if you will, logos. Syntax-wise, look at the sentence structure. And always remember, as I used to remind my students, short sentences equal power. Long sentences are where the details are going to be. So you're looking at diction, you're looking at syntax. And as Shauna was saying, one of the questions was, well, what if I run out of time? Remember, as readers, and Shauna and I have signed on again to read all your essays, we always stick close to, never deviate from the point, and the point is that we're going to reward you for what you're doing well, rather for what you're not doing so well. So if you forget the conclusion, if you're not able to get a conclusion, we're going to score the essay based on what you've given us. So be aware of that. Because you don't complete the essay doesn't mean that you're not going to do well. We're going to score the essay based on the work that you have done. So I think that's something that you need to be aware of, that everything that we do is being done as far as scoring your essay, reading your essay. It's being read to, if you will, give you the benefit of the doubt, work with what you've given us. So certainly you want to finish the essay, but if you happen to run out of time, keep in mind that the rules really haven't changed. You're still going to have 45 minutes to write this essay. The only difference is, which would bode in your favor, you're not going to have to write 2 more essays. So you've got to look at the glass as being half full rather than half empty. Does that make sense, guys? Give me a thumbs up if this is making sense. Give me emojis. Let me see what you're thinking. How much time would you leave to submit the essay? What is it? I think that you have a total of 10 minutes to get everything up and going. Shauna, you want to jump in?
5 minutes.
5 minutes to do this. When you step back, and given the fact that you've been practicing all year long on the timed writings, you've got to realize that 45 minutes is actually a lot of time. But the key is going to be that you immediately attack the passage and certainly the prompt. Okay, I think that's going to be key, which you should have been doing, and you have been doing the entire year. All right? So what other questions do we have, guys? Anyway, check out the strategy that I shared with you. I think it's turning the tables, and it's asking you to write the prompts, because remember, it doesn't matter how well you write. If you do not address the prompt, you're not going to do well.
Okay, Ruben, we've done 28 questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to draw the question that have the most votes. And the first one is, and I'm going to let you speak to it, Ruben, so I'll let you unmute yourself. What's the best way to get the sophistication point?
I'm sorry, what now?
What is the best way to get the sophistication point?
The sophistication point, guys, is number one, certainly not, it's not impossible, but it's going to be difficult to get. Okay, because again, when you're looking at the sophistication point, it's going to speak to the commentary in the second row. Okay, the commentary is going to be what's going to show me 2 things. The first thing is that commentary is important because it's going to prove to me, the reader, and Shauna, the reader, number one, that you understand it, and secondly, commentary is pivotal because commentary also explains to me that you truly understand that point, and more importantly, the commentary shows me that you own the essay. And when I say that you own the essay, what I mean by that is that 70 to 75, even 80% of the writing that I will be reading, that I will be scoring you on, has to belong to you. The other 10% belongs to the text itself, meaning that this is where you're going to take the textual evidence and include it. Direct quotes, paraphrasing, summarizing. That has to be kept to a minimum because, again, at least in my opinion, the commentary is what's going to move you up from a 5 to a 6. Effective complex thinking. Your reasoning, the line of reasoning, I must see that in order to award that 1 point. So the commentary, you've heard this 1,000 times before, commentary, as I told my kids, is king. It is all in the commentary. It shows me that you own the essay, that you understood the rhetorical analyses that you just conducted over the passage.
Yeah, and one other thing I would like to add on Ruben's discussion of commentary is what we're seeing as we're utilizing the rubric and rating essays this year is another way to increase the chances of getting the sophistication point is making sure that you have transitions from paragraph to paragraph. So if you typically write a 5-paragraph essay, introduction, 3 bodies, and a conclusion, we need to know, and when you need to demonstrate, when you make that thesis statement, and I have that question written down about thesis statements, we'll talk about that. When you have that thesis statement, that each claim, each topic sentence is connecting back to the thesis statement, but then you're transitioning from idea to idea to, so everything is interconnected. Instead of just talking about these things in isolation, if you show a connection, how one affects the other. Someone had asked about devices and strategies, and I said, well, a rhetorical choice is using a rhetorical device or a rhetorical strategy. But you have to think about it like this. A rhetorical device is word choice, but word choice creates tone, which is a strategy that a writer might use in order to emotionally move their audience. And so if you're going to talk about word choice in one of your paragraphs as example and tone, and maybe the next paragraph, now you're bringing the appeal to emotion. That tone that was created with those words elicited an emotional response, which is an appeal to pathos. So that making those connections between your ideas and your examples will also increase your sophistication point. All right, Ruben, the next question with the highest vote is, do you have tips for time management? I'll start that one off and then let you jump in. So as I alluded to earlier, prep. Have everything prepped the day before, the week before, and then the day of. Use that tip sheet. I'm glad you guys like that tip sheet. I worked on it a long time for you. That tip sheet is so important for you to use. So then your mind's not cluttered, because when you're not prepared and something goes wrong, the body floods with cortisone. It goes into the brain, and then you have all this fuzzy thinking, and you don't remember what you were saying or what you're doing. So preparation is key for time management. It allows you to be calm. Maybe do some stretches before you log on. Clear that mind. The other thing with time management is what I alluded to earlier. As
Shauna, you froze up. Guys, can you hear me? Let me see some thumbs up if you can hear me. All right, but let me see some. All right, but you can hear me, right? Okay, good deal. All right, let me see a thumbs up if you. All right, good deal. Well, let me pick up here where Shauna left off, because obviously she's frozen. Let me point out a couple of things also that I think are very important concerning time management. I think one of the key things as a reader now for 18 years is that don't waste your time, guys, wanting to educate me. When I say educate me, what I mean by that is that what we often see is that students tend to be very verbose in their choice of vocabulary. They're wanting to use, if you will, the word that comes to mind is anaphora. Okay? They're wanting to use asyndeton, polysyndeton. And what we instead prefer is that you avoid being verbose in wanting to teach me and wanting to educate me. There's a strong likelihood that Sean has heard these terms, as have I. A lot of students choose to throw these terms out, then want to define them for us. That's a waste of time. And in fact, I recommend that instead of throwing out the word anaphora, if you simply keep it simple, and you simply say repetition. This is what we're looking for. I think a lot of students take a lot of time wanting to school us, if you will. They're also wanting to, if you will, define terms for us. That's a waste of time. We know exactly what we're looking for. Do not summarize the passage for us. We have the passage in front of us. We're going to live with a passage for 8 long days as we score your essays. So don't waste valuable time reinventing the wheel. Keep it simple, okay? Keep it very, very simple. This is what we want you guys to do. Time-wise also, again, you've been working the entire year in order to bring yourself up to speed concerning the 45 minutes. Read the passage. My students, I always told them, take 3 to 4 minutes to not only read, but annotate the passage. Notice, if you will, the verbs in the prompt as well, and immediately circle the verbs, because the verbs are the ones that are going to tell you the areas that you must address. Okay? Is that making sense? Again, I lost Shauna somewhere in there, and she was monitoring the questions. Let me check questions. Again, I think that the issue of time management keeps coming up. I think that, am I frozen as well? Again, thumbs up if you can hear me still. 1 thumbs up. But you can hear me though, right? Okay, good deal. All right, let me check the questions, okay? I'm going to be toggling back and forth. So let me see what questions are coming up. Okay, let me address this question. The issue of how many paragraphs you need to have. You know, that's a question that I really can't answer because, guys, the question will be addressed when you've addressed the commentary in your commentary, when you have rhetorically analyzed the prompt and the text effectively. Shauna has her students look at 3, or discussing 3 rhetorical devices, 3 strategies. I have my students look at only 2. And by having them look at only 2, it's always been, I've always felt good about only 2 rhetorical devices because they're going to be looking at only 2 and discussing those 2 in full detail, extensively. Because what we often have, at least in my case, when my students wanted to discuss 3 or 4 devices, what in essence they were giving me, and I still see this at the reading, is that I see what I call a grocery list. You're telling me I am looking at diction. Then you give an example from the Texas diction, and you tell me, thus word choice is effective because he creates a sense of ethos. You really haven't told me anything, okay? What you need to do is, in my opinion, look at 2 to 3 devices and let the devices or the strategies dictate the number of paragraphs, but don't get caught up in having to have a certain number of paragraphs. Again, we have read at the reading essays that have been 3 paragraphs long, but because the discussion is so extensively done, that they tend to score very high. So don't get, again, caught up in the number of paragraphs, because paragraphs isn't really going to dictate how effective your essay is going to be. The effectiveness of your essay is going to be based on the extent of your discussion. And equally important, does the discussion belong to you? Or does it belong to the text itself, in which case, if it belongs to the writer, what you've done is you've given us a lot of cutting and pasting. And that speaks back to, as I said earlier, do not give us the majority of what you're writing by reinventing, telling us what the text has already told us. Again, I've got the text in front of me. Don't waste your time doing that. I want to know what you have to say concerning why the writer has, or how the writer, rather, has created an effective argument. Okay? All right. Shauna is trying to get back. Let me check the questions, and then we'll go from there. Again, somebody asked, how do we make sure to get full points for evidence? You're going to get the full points by how extensive the evidence is. So again, the evidence you're going to be discussing in your commentary. So yes, the evidence is going to be pulled from the text itself, but please make sure that the commentary fully explains the fact that you get it and makes a connection between the textual evidence, the device, and the effect that the writer has created. Okay? Again, I apologize, guys, for all these issues that we're having. Do you think the test will be pre-20th century? I have no idea. Again, the only people that know that are the people on the test development committee. We have absolutely no idea if it's going to be post 20th century. Just again, be aware of the fact that you're going to be analyzing it for its effectiveness. So again, no idea on our part, guys, concerning what the question's going to be post 20th century. Absolutely no idea. All right.
Ruben,
what do you mean by? All right, let me answer this question right quickly, Shauna. What do you mean by extensive? The effect that the device creates? Yes, the effect that the device creates and your understanding of that effect. Okay? That's the key. Extensive, we need to see that you get it. Okay? We need to see that you understand the intended effect. I hope I answered your question there.
Sorry, guys. Okay, so you're asking for the checklist. I sent it to Fiveable, and this is where they uploaded it. So if you're having problems getting the checklist, I can. Okay. All right. So that was the note. Could you share the note sheet with us, please? It would really help. Okay, so are you asking me for a separate note sheet that I did for my kids? Is that what you're asking me for? When it says, could you share the note sheet? So with note sheets, basically, all I did was create for my kids. So in the somewhere in the chat, I talked about, because my kids are like, do I need to list a NAFRA, which is repetition? And I said, and I've always told my kids, you don't have to name the rhetorical device. The strategy kind of sort of connects to purpose. You don't have to say there's a NAFRA or epistrophe, which are both repetition. What you have to say is, like, for example, the Margaret Thatcher speech, a eulogy, she kept calling Ronald Reagan a great American, a great leader, a great man, and she great, but then when she got to friend, she changed the word. So why would she call him great of all these other things, but when it gets to a friend, she calls him loyal, like a loyal friend? Well, she's repeating the word great because she's trying to say he was a great president, but he was a much better friend. And so you want to speak to what's happening and not necessarily all the devices. The other thing is on what I did on this. So I told my kids, I said, here, and I put it in your chat. I said, don't talk about NAFRA, talk about repetition. So in the notes in the chat somewhere, I listed all those. And then their other side of the note sheet, all I did was do a box for thesis and then possible devices they would talk about. And then I call them claims. You may call them topic sentence, body paragraphs. I created a note sheet of a framework of a 5-paragraph essay because most of my students are comfortable with that. And that's for them just to write notes in. So the tip sheet that I gave you, the checklist today, is that tip sheet. The note sheet that I'm referring to for my students, I just said, don't talk about a NAFRA, talk about repetition. You can talk about parallelism, but balance. Why are you balancing those two ideas together? How does it create uniformity, or how does it create an understanding that Reagan was a president and a friend, right? So you can create your own note sheet. You can talk to your teachers about them creating note sheets. You could probably Google. I haven't even start to look at Google. So I don't have it in a link, Amani, so I'll have to talk to Fiveable after this about getting it. Okay. Ruben, the next question. Do you have a guess on how many points we need for a 5? I'm going to guess they're asking how many examples of evidence that we might need. A 5 would be 1 for thesis, which everyone should get. 4 for evidence is really going to be difficult. Ruben, you want to take a shot at that?
And I'm sorry, as far as the evidence is concerned, how many points do we need to pass the exam? Well, remember the points that we're guessing, because the College Board has not said yet, but we're looking at possibly upper half essays will be 4, 5, and 6s. Lower half essays will be 3, 2, and 1. As Sean has already said, be aware of the fact, guys, it will be inexcusable, and I've told this to students, that you not get the first point for the thesis statement. That's a given. You've got to have that. From there on, obviously, the next points are going to come from the evidence and the commentary. Again, it's going to be based on the extent of your discussion, based on your understanding of the devices that you select to discuss that the writer has utilized. Let me make one more point, and we're running out of time, but my concern is this, is that, and I totally understand that you're wanting to have that cheat sheet, okay, and totally get the fact that you need to have something. I would worry about and tell my students, at least my students, that sometimes less is best. Because what you don't want to, and this plays into the time factor, and you were asking how do you utilize time best, what you don't want to do is have so much information written that as you begin to read the prompt, begin to consider the devices that you want to discuss, as you go back and you look at your notes, you've written so much that you're going to get lost in the midst of so much being there. If you've been very effective in discussing the issue of tone, immediately look at the passage, and as you're reading the passage, consider identifying areas where tone can be found. If you're very strong and have been strong the entire year concerning the issue of syntax, sentence structure, immediately look at and identify strength and or weaknesses, probably going to be strength, concerning the issue of syntax. But as I said, my concern is that you lose valuable time by wanting to piggyback from one point to the next. In the midst of doing that, you lose focus because you have so much written. So just be very careful in that regard, okay?
The next question, Ruben, is how do we make sure to get full points for evidence? And this is where you get the most points for your essay. So again, the thesis statement, I think, is the easiest point you can earn. You speak to the rhetorical choices, you talk about meaning and purpose, great. In those body paragraphs, when you start connecting back, so in your introduction, when you identified rhetorical choices, I'm sure your teachers have taught you how to deconstruct the prompt, look for purpose, meaning maybe you use the soapstone technique, but you've got to walk away from the passage understanding what was the point of that passage. How is that affecting me? If it's a eulogy, obviously it's to bring respect about someone. If it's a letter, it may be a request. So you've got to figure out what was the big idea, what's the purpose. And so when you're trying to get full points for evidence, yes, you're talking about the rhetorical choice, which could be a device, word choice, which could be a strategy, tone, but connect it back to the purpose. Why use those words to create that tone? Because of this purpose. You do that every time you use evidence, you're going to fully develop why you're talking about that rhetorical choice. Otherwise, you're just identifying it, defining it, and giving an example. That won't give you the full range of this 4-point scale. I'll let Ruben step in here.
Well, and again, folks, Sean is spot on. I think that it's going to be an interesting year. Well, heck, it already has been an interesting year, because I think is that, number one, like you guys are getting used to a new scoring system, so are we. Okay? So be aware of that. Again, as far as your thesis statement is concerned, I strongly recommend that you keep it simple. You keep it very simple because, as I said, look at and refer to the sample essays that your teachers have shared with you, especially those essays that have gotten that 1 point. And use it as a jumping point to dictate the rest of your essay. I think it's just keep it simple. I think for the past 6, 7, 8 years, we've also gone with very short introductions. I recommend that you keep the introduction very, very short. Again, don't reinvent the wheel by summarizing what Abigail Adams did when she did that. No, we have Abigail Adams sitting in front of us. We had her in front of us so we could read that. Keep the introduction short, keep it simple, tell me what you're planning to do. Abigail Adams, in her use of diction and syntax, created a tone of pathos and showed the love that she had for her son. Now move into the body of the essay to discuss the issue of tone, to discuss the issue of a motherly love for her son, et cetera, et cetera. Keep it simple, please.
Okay, the next question is, would you suggest a device-driven thesis or a strategy-driven thesis? Well, when you say device or strategy, they're both rhetorical choices. And so really what you're saying when you say device-driven thesis, you're talking about listing. The author uses alliteration, diction, and syntax. And if you just stop there, that's a thesis statement. It's a very weak thesis statement, but you just listed what the rhetorical choices are. When you do that, you're typically going to score lower when you do device driven. And this is where I would tell you, this is where you need to go to those AP videos that College Board consultants are doing, because I know Ruben and I both know Emily. They are really good videos, and Emily goes through a device driven thesis versus an idea driven thesis. And I think they're so valuable. I think there are videos like 11, 12, 13, 14 in there. You'll find them by the topic. And she does a really good job with the Margaret Albright Mount Holyoke speech. And so that's what I would suggest you do. Now, if it's too difficult for you to think about an idea driven, just list the devices and connect them to the purpose or the overall message. And then, but you're not going to lose your thesis point if you write a device-driven thesis point. You're not going to lose it, but it can affect your sophistication point. Ruben, do you want to add anything to that?
I think you've covered it. I think you've said it as basic and as simply as it needs to be done. We can't overthink this, okay? We can't overthink this. Good question came up, let me see, concerning the rhetorical situation. And I think, Tiffany, you wrote, if the prompt basically gives a rhetorical situation, is it worth revealing in the intro? I think that's an incredible question. I think that, remember, the rhetorical situation is set up for your understanding of the intent of the speech, of the letter, of the text itself. No, the rhetorical situation, I wouldn't take the time to explain it to Shauna or me, because we're already going to be aware of that. You just need to jump into the meat, into if you will, jump into the weeds, as I call it, and discuss what you need to discuss, because again, don't waste your time, valuable time, explaining to us what you're going to do. Okay? Don't explain what the rhetorical situation is to us. We are already aware of what that is. You hit the floor running and do what you need to do. I think that's a very, very good question.
And I'll just piggyback off that. When Ruben said, tell us, so like when we had the Margaret Thatcher speech, it was a eulogy. As an AP reader, I know what a eulogy is. You don't have to define for me what is a eulogy. What you need to tell me is, what is the purpose of a eulogy? It never in there did it say that the eulogy that Margaret Thatcher gave to Reagan brought honor, respect to a loyal friend. But you know that a eulogy is to bring honor and respect to someone, to honor someone's life, their contributions. So you could speak to that in your introduction, but don't define what a eulogy is for me. All right, Ruben, the last question, because we've got like 2 minutes left. Do you think the text will be pre-20th century or a more modern piece? My response before Ruben talks is, as I said earlier, I don't have a crystal ball. Every year the College Board shocks us. We know the people on the testing committee, but it doesn't help us in any way to see what's going to happen. And sometimes when I guessed that the FRQ was going to be synthesis, and it turned out to be rhetorical analysis. So Ruben, you got to get.
Well, and Shauna, I think I addressed this when we lost you. Again, we have absolutely no idea what they're, if it's post 20th century. Absolutely not. I think a couple of things that it doesn't really matter what they're asking you. That what you need to be aware of is that you're looking at an argument. Okay, you're looking at an argument, whether post 20th century, you're looking at an argument. Be aware of that. And secondly, what we also tend to see a lot is that a lot of students want to be very critical of the passage because they don't like it. and they quickly will tell us the letter that Abigail Adams wrote is terrible, it is not effective, etc., etc. If you don't like the piece, I strongly recommend that you tell us that you do. Because certainly an effective rhetorical analysis can be written as to why Abigail Adams' letter was so bad. But when you tell us it's a bad argument, you've opened the door and you've ramped up the fact that you have to truly prove to me why this beautiful piece of text, this speech, this letter, prove it to me. If it is bad, show me why it's a bad letter. So they're never going to give you a text, whether you like it or not, that is poorly written. Because I've seen a lot of essays where students say, it's just a terrible piece of work, and the fact of the matter is, it's not a bad piece of work. It's a beautiful piece that you've been given. So be aware of that, because I often see students, I don't like it. I don't really care that you like it or not. What you need to do is you need to show me why this piece was effectively written via the use of this device, and this device. Okay, so we have no idea what you're going to get.
Guys, we're at the hour mark, but there is one question that I want to address because I already put it in the chat. When you're looking at common rhetorical devices and strategies, again, I would send you back to the AP videos on the College Board website. They go through rhetorical choices and they talk about devices and strategies. But I always tell my students to look for word choice, which creates tone, which is a strategy, word choice, repetition, omission, balance, which is parallel structure, and I'm forgetting what. Oh, comparisons, like metaphor and simile. Okay, but you can say that Abigail Adams compares her son to, rather than saying Abigail Adams uses the metaphor. Just talk about what it's doing, and then with strategies, talk about tone, talk about appeal to emotions. You're talking about pathos. The author uses pathos. No, the Margaret Thatcher tugs at the heart of the American people. That tells me emotion. So you really want to speak to the appeals, logic. Some of my favorite writer is Martin Luther King Jr. because the man can organize his arguments with the appeals to ethos, logos, and pathos, but then use devices like repetition and parallel structure and metaphors and similes and biblical allusions. And it's beautiful how he just weaves them together. So don't try to throw out language. Just tell us what's happening. Tell us what you see and how is it affecting the audience. And that's the best way to do it. And so, again, if you still want more information, there are so many College Board videos on the College Board website. And then there's a tiny URL link, and they have tons of sheets and helpful sheets in there. So I really suggest you that you go there. But that's our hour, guys. Can you mention author, work title? Oh, you're asking a kid, Ruben. That's our time. So I'm going to say thank you very much and have a good night. I see that Fady says, can we meet like this again? Fady, this was through NMSI. If you're part of a NMSI school or if you want to talk to the Fiveable people, yeah, Ruben and I would be happy to come back.
Thank you guys for everything. And again, remember, breathe and relax a little bit. I think we're on the tail end of this. Try not to stress. Stress, being concerned, I don't call it stress, being concerned, can be healthy. I think you know what you're doing, just do it and have fun with it. All righty? Thanks a lot, guys.
Sorry, Ruben. Good night, Ruben.
Good night.